We are the last generation of pure humans that this world will ever know. The drawback of replacing our bodies with technology is we begin to lose the very essence of what we cherish as a species. It is our destiny to unlock our potential and enable those extraordinary capacities we think only special people have, like deep intuition, remote viewing, telepathy, rapid healing, longevity, super memory, super learning, super cognition. We have something inside of us that allows us to tap knowledge that is not limited by time and space. We're coming so close to the close of this cycle, to awakening that power. There has been a concerted effort for thousands of years to deny that power. It takes more distractions in the world out there to keep us in fear, to keep our attention occupied with this crisis. No other form of life can do what we can do. That makes us very powerful beings. Once we lose our humanness, we'll never get that back again. Technology outside of our bodies can serve us. Inside our bodies, it can enslave us.
Welcome back to the Healing and Human Potential podcast, where today we're diving into one of the most important questions of our time: what it means to be human in a world increasingly shaped by AI, technology, and disconnection. So we're going to explore how this is impacting our intuition, empathy, and emotional intelligence, as well as what we risk losing if we forget our deeper capacities. We'll talk about heart-brain coherence, the power of our words, and how reconnecting with our divinity could shift not just our lives, but the future for our planet. So joining us is Gregg Braden, a 5 times New York Times bestselling author, scientist, and pioneer known for bridging science, spirituality, and human potential. His latest book, Pure Human, offers a powerful invitation to remember who we truly are. Let's dive in. Gregg, I'm so happy that you're here. What a gift. I can already feel your presence and the lightheartedness in which you move through the world, but also the sincerity in your heart.
Thank you, Alyssa. I am absolutely thrilled to be here. I live in the high deserts in northern New Mexico. I don't get this close to the water very often, and it's a beautiful day. It's the first time you and I have worked together.
Yeah.
And the truth is, it's unscripted. We don't know where it's going to go. It is a dance. I'm going to follow your lead, and let's just have fun.
Okay,
have fun
beautiful. Yeah, I know that this is an intense time in the world. A lot is shifting, and with technology changes as well as political changes, people even redefining and looking at spirituality differently. I'm just curious, in your perspective, how do you see this impacting us? And what are we being pulled away from in the process?
Sure. Well, I think it's obvious to anyone, certainly to our community. Your community is my family, and so I feel like we're talking to the same people. We all know it's not business as usual. There's something up in the world. It's something that is not often spoken about in the mainstream. And if we don't recognize that this is a rare and precious moment in human history, if we don't recognize that something's up, it can appear very frightening. It looks like things are just popping off, like the world is coming apart for no apparent reason. I lost my mom to COVID right before in 20, and right before she passed, she said, "Gregg, the world is going to hell in a handbasket." Is her term. Yeah. I got the hell part, the handbasket part, I was never really sure. But I understood, to her, it looked like things were coming apart at the seams for no apparent reason. I'm a scientist, a degreed earth scientist with a very strong background, math, physics, computer science. I'm a systems thinker. And what a systems thinker does is tend to go to the biggest possible picture for context. And then once that context is there, to zero in on the nanosecond of our lives to know where we fit into that big picture. So what I recognize is that we're living a time of convergence on many levels. Cosmological cycles are converging, tectonic cycles, geophysical cycles, cultural cycles, economic cycles. War cycles. War actually occurs in cycles. When I spoke at the UN, they weren't aware of that.
Oh, interesting.
They thought it just happens when it happens. But there are cycles, when 56-year cycles, when war ebbs and flows on a global basis. All of these and more cycles are converging in this little window of time between now and right around 2030 to 2032, right around in there. And in that convergence, I think what we're seeing is anything that is not true is collapsing under the burden of its own falsity, if we can say it that way. And what we're also seeing is the systems, anything that is not sustainable, is falling apart pretty quickly. And so people say to me, "Well, Gregg, everything's coming apart." It's because most of our social structure is unsustainable.
Yeah.
And I think we know that. The social systems, political systems, economic systems, certainly the climate systems, the way we deal with energy and the way we deal with finances, all of those things are unsustainable. Doesn't necessarily mean that they're bad. Yeah. They were designed to function in a certain window of time, and we've outgrown those systems. We're outgrowing that window of time. What is so interesting, Alyssa, is that typically this kind of change happens over a generation. And we're seeing it in a single lifetime, in a single lifetime. And so it requires us to think differently, to live our lives differently. And for those people that are clinging to their idea of what the world used to be and struggling to go back to that world, those are the people that are suffering right now because that world is gone. We cannot go back to the world that we knew even 10 to 15 years ago, because it no longer exists. And that's hard for some people. So I think what we're being challenged to do is to be honest, truthful, factual, to embrace what's true about the world, but most importantly, what's true about ourselves. And this, I think, is not only the challenge, but it's where the excitement comes from.
Tell me more.
Well, what we know... Can I talk about this book?
Let's talk about this book.
I have a book called Pure Human that I wrote for this very reason. There are two parallel themes in this book. One, and this is no secret to anyone watching this program, there's a concerted effort right now to replace our humanness with technology, both in the world around us as well as inside of our bodies. And I want to talk about what the drawbacks are of that. But there is a concerted effort through artificial intelligence, computer chips in the brain, chemicals in the blood, RFID chips under the skin, nanosensors throughout the body, and much, much more, to replace our humanness with machines on the one hand. And that's one theme in the book. And I want people to know that this is a concerted effort. The laws are already being written. The policies are already being enacted. So it's not hypothetical, and it's not like 10 years down the road. This stuff's happening right now on the one hand. And on the other hand, the best science of the modern world is showing us that in most cases, our own natural biology not only meets the capacity of the technology that we're being asked to put in our bodies, but we exceed the capacity of the very technology we're being asked to replace ourselves with. And that's exciting because we have been conditioned, indoctrinated through our educational systems and culture and society and false and obsolete science to believe that we are a flawed form of life. We're taught from the time we're young, and not just this generation, this goes back into the mid-20th century, that by virtue of being a carbon-based being, a human, we are a flawed form of life, and that makes us victims. And it suggests that we need something outside of ourselves to be the best version of ourselves. That something is being touted as technology. So it is these two parallel themes that have come together for this book. The best minds of our now 21st century are telling us that unless we change the trajectory where we are right now, very probably, not possibly, probably we are the last generation of pure humans that this world will ever know, and thus the name of the book. I believe that we are worth preserving, that there's something so ancient and sacred and rare and precious about our humanness that is so often neglected, especially in the modern world, and especially with our young people. Man, nobody's telling our young people, giving them any reason not to take computer chips in their brains and chemicals in their blood. They're not giving a reason not to. We're worth preserving, and we're about to give away our humanness. We're on the precipice of giving it away to technology, to the speed and efficiency of computer chips and AI before we even fully understand what it means to be human. So my purpose, I wrote the book, at the very least, I'm hoping the readers walk away with a deeper appreciation for their own humanness, number one. And maybe I push a little bit, but maybe even a sense of pride. I personally am proud to be a human. And the more I understand about our true history, through the texts that are being revealed in new translations of documents hidden by the Vatican and omitted from our biblical canons and all these things, the more I understand that, the more proud I am of who we are and what we represent, and the potential, our destiny. I believe it is our destiny to unlock our potential. And we're only beginning to do that, and we're about to lose our humanness before we even know what that means. That makes sense if I say that to you?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. And I love that you're on the Healing and Human Potential podcast. And so
I
this
love
is
that
very
I'm here
aligned.
as well.
So talk to us about our human potential. What do you see? What are you learning and discovering to really give voice to that so people can see that they have choice and agency and not just get swept away by this idea that we're flawed and broken and then need to replace our intelligence?
First, I'm just going to begin by acknowledging a lot of the things we're saying here. I totally get this is a very different way of thinking. I am accustomed to being in a circle that thinks and speaks this way. And when I'm touring, I'm around a lot of people. It becomes very obvious that they haven't heard these things. And so as a scientist, I'm a multidisciplinary scientist. And that gives me the ability to stay in touch with a lot of research. These research papers are not easy to read. There's a skill in learning to read them. But the science is telling us who we are, and it's published in these very obscure journals to, a group of soft computing technologists, for example, is a journal. And I mean, how many people have a beautiful hardbound copy of soft computing technology on their bedstand for light bedtime reading, like I do?
Yeah.
So here's what changed. A few years ago, scientists began looking at the human body not from the perspective of like sticky, wet, gooey, mushy cell biology stuff. They began looking at us from an IT perspective. Now, this is a very different way of thinking. IT, information technology. People say, well, what do you mean by that? They began looking at every cell, for example, as literally an electrical circuit. And I have a picture in the book of, it's an electrical circuit, input, output, it massages electrical information. Every cell in the human body produces about 0.07 volts of electrical potential. Every cell in the body is a photon receiver. Photons are particles of light. Light is information. So we're pulling in information. Every cell in the body is a photon emitter. We're transmitting information. A lot of people have heard of blockchain technology. They don't know where the idea of blockchain technology come from. Every cell in the human body has a record of every successful genetic transaction that our species has ever accomplished. It is distributed. It's within each of us. And the way it is described, and see if these words sound familiar, the record of our species' genetic changes, it's encoded in our cells. It is transparent. It is immutable. And it is secure. And that is precisely the way we describe blockchain technology. The external blockchain technology mimics the way that DNA stores information in the human cell. And we could go on and on and on. We've got about 50 trillion cells in the average human body. And those 50 trillion cells, you do the math, times 0.07 volts of potential, you're looking at 3.5 trillion volts of potential. And what would it mean if we could apply that to our own healing, to deep intuition, to being able to tap the information in the field that scientists now acknowledge exists? July 4th, 2012, scientists at the CERN superconducting supercollider in Geneva announced, lo and behold, there's a field of energy that underlies all existence. It used to be a metaphor. New thought, new age people used to always talk about this field, and now it's called the Higgs field. Peter Higgs is the physicist. He predicted it. He's still alive. He got to see, I think he's still alive. He got to see his prediction come true. And so now the question is there a field there? The question is, what is our relationship to the field? What's it mean to us? I mean, this is the field. Sometimes we just call it the field. Lynn McTaggart, my dear friend, wrote the book called The Field. Sometimes we call it the matrix. Sometimes we call it the Planck field after Max Planck. Sometimes we call it the 0 point field, the Akashic records. All different names for this field of energy that underlies our existence. Well, here's where it gets interesting. even more interesting, is there's a part of us that scientists know doesn't live inside of ourselves, an energetic existence that lives in that field. And our bodies, literally the cell membranes, the DNA within the cells, literally are antenna that tune to the information that is non-local to us. So for example, one of those obscure journals, the Proceedings from the Journal of Soft Computing is one of the technical magazines. It's not a biology book. It's about soft computational techniques. Literally says human DNA is it is a 3D fractal antenna. Now that's a big statement. A fractal antenna. We know that an antenna tunes the signals. A fractal antenna tunes to many signals across a broad spectrum of information. And here's the science telling us every cell in our body, 50 trillion cells, we got 50 trillion antenna, literally tuning this information. And the way we think and feel changes the shape of the antenna in the cell. It changes the shape of the DNA inside the cell. The Institute of Heart Math here in Northern California, in Boulder Creek, are dear friends I've worked with since their inception. I'm not their employee, but we share data, we share webinars, we do fundraising.
Beautiful.
We become really good friends, and they showed scientifically that human emotion changes what's called the conformation, the shape of DNA inside the cells. And it's very intuitive when we are in fear, or what you call a negative emotion, angry, frustrated. The DNA is wound up tight like a little knot, and it cannot express fully because it's wound up tight. And in the presence of love and gratitude and appreciation and compassion, the DNA relaxes so it can have a full expression. That is us having an emotion changing the shape of the DNA inside of our bodies. That shape is determining what we are tuned into as antenna in the field. So can I just give an example?
Yeah, please ground it. Yeah, I love it. It's fascinating.
And then I'll
it's
stop
great.
for a minute.
I love it. Imagine having a fulfilling career doing what you love, working from anywhere in the world, setting your own hours while making good money and a big impact. If that lights you up, then I'm super excited to share with you today's sponsor, the Institute for Coaching Mastery. This is my robust, accredited, year-long certification program for new or seasoned coaches, therapists, leaders, and those just looking to up-level their life in a profound way. We have an amazing community of students from all around the world who have really started their journey to expand with us both personally and professionally. And this experience is designed to give you the 3 things that you need to thrive. So first, you have all of the tools and support you need to move past what's been holding you back so that you can completely change the trajectory of your life. And then you learn how to masterfully and confidently facilitate transformation with your clients or your team, regardless of your niche. If you want to do health, business, relationship, or you just have no idea yet, we hold your hand through that. And then lastly, you'll receive my 6-figure and beyond signature roadmap that's customizable to meet you wherever you are. So whether you want to do high ticket sales, online marketing, or you just want to hit 6 figures without ever needing to go on social media, we've got you covered. And this truly is the most rewarding work in the world. We have new students now who have a wait list of dream clients in under a year. We also have seasoned students who are doing $80,000 months. And this is really about creating lasting transformation from the inside out so that you can share your gifts and serve the world in all the ways that you're called to. And I've seen firsthand the power of what happens when you have the community to collaborate with, but you also have the right tools and resources to really thrive. And so whether you want to do your own personal development, you're wanting to become a coach, or you're just looking for a cutting edge approach to really grow your business, the Institute for Coaching Mastery is for you. You are held every single step of the way. And so if you want to get behind the scenes access to the Institute with 3 proven transformational tools for free to help you create the business and life you love, all you have to do is go to alyssanobriga.com/tools. Or you can find us at alyssanobriga.com/apply now to see all the details and apply today.
There was an experiment that was done in 2022, and this is kind of a mind blower, especially for people that were not alive in 1972. So 1972, the first commercial computer game was released, and it was a very, very primitive computer game called Pong, P-O-N-G. Have you ever seen Pong?
Yes.
So for those of our viewers, I'm going to look at the camera. For those of our viewers that haven't, it was like a very simple game of two-dimensional tennis or badminton on the screen. The cursor would go up and the puck would hit it and then would go down and bounce and go up. People would spend hours at work on company time, just locked into this game, mesmerized by this game. Well, here's why I'm sharing this. 2022, researchers at the Salk Institute, just right up the coast from where we are right now, they took some human neurons, not attached to a body, and they put them into a petri dish. And we all know neurons have look like tentacles. They're called dendrites. They took those little dendrites and they found a way to attach them to a computer chip. There was a little port where the biological cell could link to the computer chip. So now you've got a biology technology interface, okay? Neuron attached to a chip. They put that chip in the computer, and the computer was loaded with a game of Pong. They turned on the game. They booted the game up. The neurons began playing Pong, and the longer the neurons played, the more they learned and the better they got. And so now the scientists are faced with a tough question, dilemma. How do neurons in a petri dish, not attached to a human, how do they know how to play Pong? Where are the instructions for the Pong? Are they inside the neurons? Well, they're not. Now, what we know is those neurons are biological antennae that are tuned to a place in the field. So many people played Pong. It was pervasive in our culture. There's a place in the field where Pong lives, just like there's a place in the field if you've ever learned to speak a foreign language. Everybody that speaks Spanish lives in the field, and as you learn the language, it takes some time, because your cells and your DNA are following your instructions. You are attempting to become something more than you were a moment before. You're attempting to better yourself. That attempt, the act of learning something new, is the biological instruction for the neurons and the DNA to create the antenna to tune to the place where Spanish or French, or I've tried to learn Tibetan, or Pong, or intuition, or the answers to our life's questions, all of these things, it's in the field. And if we don't know that, and science is struggling with this right now, conventional science believes it's all consciousness is in the brain. They're trying to figure it out as if consciousness is confined to the brain. And I'm sharing this because now I'm going to come full circle. The concerted effort to replace our humanness, the net effect of that is that we deny our ability to access the part of ourselves that's in the field, because the synthetics cannot tune on demand the way that we do to what's in the field. So we begin replacing brain cells with computer chips, and we begin replacing our immune response with chemicals in the blood, and we begin replacing our body with synthetics. There is no DNA, there is no antenna that can morph and adapt to our belief systems and our thoughts, and to our love, to our forgiveness, to our compassion, to our empathy. Synthetics can't do that. We lose our humanness. Our human abilities begin to atrophy, and we begin to lose the very essence of what we cherish as a species. And that is the drawback of replacing our bodies with technology and what is called the transhuman movement. Trans means beyond. So the beyond human movement. And this is what we're not telling our young kids. There's some very sexy, very slick marketing. I mean, I know what's happening. I'm still in awe when I see them. They make it look really good. So young people, for example, Neuralink, Elon Musk company, was the first to design a computer chip
For the brain.
For the brain that allows us to communicate with a hard drive on a computer with no wires and no keyboard. So young people say, wait a minute, you're telling me I can play like Grand Theft Auto 3 and not have to use a keyboard? Sweet, bring it on. Okay, here's what they're not being told. And I'm just going to give an example of this. It wasn't that long ago we were told that the number of brain cells in the human brain is finite at birth. You're born with a certain number of brain cells. Every beer you drink when you're in college,
goodness,
and every glass of wine is going to kill some brain cells. We've all heard that before. Well, now we know that we're producing new brain cells until the last breath we take of our lives. But there's a catch. And the catch is, unless we engage the brain cell in a meaningful way within about 7 to 10 days, within about a week, the body believes that the cell is not needed. And it will begin to atrophy and die because our biology is use it or lose it. We've all heard that. So if the body says, hey, I produce these cells, it's taking ATP energy to keep them alive. If you're not going to use them, we're going to be efficient. We'll let these cells go. That principle applies to the entire human body. And that's why when you begin replacing the body, whether it's the immune system or cognitive abilities or reproduction or whatever it is, with technology that replaces our natural abilities, our abilities begin to atrophy because they feel they're not being used. In one generation, next generation, through epigenetics, the body says, oh, we used to produce a strong immune response to these contagions, but we got chemicals in our bodies that do it now, so we don't have to do that. And we lose these capabilities that are so finely tuned for the world that we have today. And our young people are not being told about that. So this is the drawback of, and when we talk about this, I'm not talking about a one-off titanium hip replacement, artificial hearts. I mean, when you need them, you need them. And even computer chips in the brain. If a young man or young woman goes to the battlefield on some desert halfway around the world and they lose limbs, and they come home and they can have a computer chip in the brain that speaks to a prosthetic arm or a leg that allows them to hold their babies in their arms and to feed themselves and brush their own teeth. I mean, what a beautiful, beautiful thing. Who wouldn't want that? This isn't what we're talking about. The proposals are in mass. All humans. For example, the year 2030, there are proposals for all humans to have computer chips in the brain by the year 2030 so that they can be competitive in this new technological world. That's the story.
And you said you're a systems thinker and that you look at the big picture. What is your understanding, or why? Why by 2030?
Well, 2030 has been identified by a number of organizations. The World Economic Forum, many people have heard of, has identified 2030 as a year they want to implement what they call the Great Reset, or they say we're living what's called the Fourth Industrial Revolution, which is, in their own words, it is the merging of all of the natural world tokenized. So digital representation for every fish in the ocean, which we already have. All the trees, all the mineral deposits, we already have this. So it is the merging of the natural world, the merging of the digital world, which already exists, and the merging of our biological world, which does not exist yet, into a single combined database, if you will, run by a massive AI. The AI is already there. The natural world is already digitized. The digital world is digitized. We're the holdout. And they're pushing to have this by the year 2030. The UN has something called SDG 2030, United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Yeah. Year 2030. I worked on those goals for a period of time until I realized what it was that was happening. When you see the goals, you go to the website, UN website,
Looks
they're
great.
beautiful goals,
Yep,
17 beautiful goals. Food security, who doesn't want that? Children's health, the end to poverty, clean water for everyone. Who doesn't want these things? Then you read the fine print of how they hope to achieve these goals, and it is frightening. It is horrendous. They're working Since 2019, they signed a formal agreement with the World Economic Forum and the UN are working together to implement the Great Reset ideas through the mechanism of the Sustainable Development Goals in the UN. A lot of people don't know that. That was a formal agreement in 2019. So these two groups are working in tandem now. So you ask about 2030. They are driving part of this 2030 date. There's some natural phenomenon that are unfolding around the year 2029, 2030 that we know of. And I don't know how deep you want to go with all of this, but there are a number of reasons for that. They are horribly behind, is what they say. They can't get traction with these ideas. And so now they're pushing them harder. They can't get traction because they're bad ideas. Really bad ideas, because the only way to achieve these goals is to give our humanness away to the technology. So I'm a tech guy. I'm not anti-tech. What I learned when I worked in the corporations in the 70s and the 80s, the tech's never right, wrong, good, or bad. It's the thinking underlying how it's used. And we live in a time, there is a deeply spiritual battle unfolding. It's always been here. It is coming to a focus, coming to a head on this planet. A battle, and I lose friends. I've lost friends for having this conversation. I've lost jobs. I've lost work. But I think we have to be honest. It's a fundamental struggle between good and evil. The word evil carries a lot of baggage. It means different things to different people. So let me define this, and then I'll stop and take a breath, because I've said a lot in just the last few moments. We hear about evil. I was born and raised, in the Midwest, rural communities of Midwest, and we used to think it was a metaphor. We'd joke about the little red devil on your shoulder and the little angel over here, and, they're going back and forth. But evil is a very real force. It's not a metaphor, and it's not a distortion of some way of thinking. It is a physical force. On this planet, we could have a whole, I'm hesitating because I don't know how deep to go with that conversation. What I think is important is that we have a benchmark. How do you know when something is evil?
Great question.
All right. When we talk about being the best version of ourselves, the way that's defined in our most ancient and cherished spiritual traditions, it's called our divinity. The word divinity is charged. It means different things to different people. The contemporary definition of divinity, it's very simple. The contemporary definition is our ability to transcend our perceived limitations. Now that's it. To become more than our perceived limitations, the limitations that probably aren't even real, perceived because we've been indoctrinated to accept the limits by our friends, family, culture, society, religion, obsolete science. I mean, it comes, from many places. But most of us are living limits that aren't even real, that we impose upon ourselves. Divinity is the ability not just to meet, but to become more than, to transcend those limits. So examples, our ability to imagine. Our imagination is an expression of our divinity. Our creativity, our innovation, our ability to innovate, take what we imagine and do something with it. Empathy, sympathy, compassion, those are three, they're in a sequence. Sympathy is first, then empathy, then compassion. Our ability to love, our ability to forgive, our ability to heal, all these are expressions of human divinity. The goal of evil, as it's stated in 3,000-year-old texts, and not just religious texts. These are Sumerian, Akkadian, Babylonian texts translated from cuneiform. The goal of the evil is to deny our divinity. So now we have a benchmark. Anything that we're asked to partake in, anything that we're asked to participate in or to accept into our lives or accept into our bodies or into our society, we don't have to guess. Does it affirm or does it deny our divinity? Does it help us to be the best version of ourselves, or does it steal in some way, some facet of our humanness? AI is a perfect example. It's not right, wrong, good, or bad. When we allow the AI to create for us, and we give our creativity away to that technology. And we all, can use it when we need to, occasionally for business purposes. But I'm talking about surrendering our creativity to a computer chip and an algorithm. That is an expression of evil, because ultimately, here's a perfect example. I remember in the 60s and 70s, when I was in school, our math was done using slide rules, which most people don't even know what they are. And we knew how to do the math. In the late 70s, Texas Instruments came out with first handheld calculators. And now, how many people if they don't have a calculator, how many people know how to do the math? Can we actually do the algebra, trigonometry, analytic geometry, differential equations? Can we do them without a machine? We've given our power away to that machine. That's a little example. I'm talking about now on a large scale, in mass, our creativity, our ability to create art and music. My wife is a voting member of the Grammys. And this year they faced a dilemma, and they don't know what to do with it. What do you do when you have a Grammy award-winning composition that was written by ChatGPT, lyrics, and then the lyrics were given to ChatGPT, and the request was to write music to go with it? And now that's competing with someone who's spent 30 years of their lives learning to vocalize, honing their skills to play an instrument. Is that a fair competition? And I don't know the answer, and they don't either.
Yeah, I feel like it's a different category.
Well, it should be, but it's not right now. And so this is what's happening. So again, it's not right, wrong, good, or bad. It's how we apply it in our lives, and it's being applied because we have been indoctrinated to think of ourselves as flawed forms of life. That's part of the indoctrination. So we're more willing, we're vulnerable and susceptible to giving our humanness away to machines, to computer technology.
I think that's one of the most important things for people to be aware of, is to really see that the idea that you are flawed and something's wrong with you is an idea. It's not true.
It's been perpetuated, consciously perpetuated, pretty much since right after World War II is when it started. It's multiple generations beginning in the 20th century. And what we're talking about is, and again, this is a deeply spiritual principle that we're talking about. There's a fundamental struggle between what we would call good and evil. Sometimes it's obvious. Sometimes it's kinetic. On a battlefield, it's obvious to see where good and evil is, but sometimes it's more subtle. Psychological evil, algorithms in our social media that turn us against one another and divide, even at the family dinner table, separate partners, husbands and wives, separate the children from their parents because they believe what they're being told, and the algorithm creates what's called a silo. It's an information silo. And so one belief system is reinforced to the exclusion of others for the young people, because the algorithm does that. And then the parents, same thing. They query something and they get a million different, it just keeps feeding information that supports the original question. No alternative ways of thinking. And they believe what they're seeing is right. The kids do. And we're seeing this in society.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that it's so important to have critical thinking.
It is. And so the deeply spiritual, really deeply spiritual principle here, when we are faced with these challenges in the world, what do we allow ourselves to become? What do we allow the events of the world to make us into? If we have an election, I know this would never happen, but just hypothetically, if there was an election that happened and it didn't turn out the way people wanted, do we allow the results of an election to drive us into these primal instincts of fear and hate and revenge, something we'd never consciously choose in a million years? Do we make choices in our lives? This is a very powerful difference. Do we make choices in our lives because of our love for our family and our friends and our society that is behind us, or because of our fear and hate for what we perceive as the enemy in front of us?
Yeah, where's the come from?
So the outcome may be the same, but on a deeply spiritual perspective, what we become is really the goal, because it's the goal of the struggle. Because when we allow ourselves to succumb to the fear and the hate, the evil then has denied our divinity. And this is the definition of divinity. This is maybe the most important thing that I could ever offer our community. How do you know when something is evil? I mean, you get a gut feeling, but how can you really quantize it? Evil's goal is to deny our divinity. So anything that denies our divinity, anything that keeps us from being the best version, from loving, forgiving, from healing our own bodies. Well, we're told something else has to heal our bodies because we are so flawed, we can't heal our own bodies. We need a chemical in our bodies to do that. That is an expression of evil because it is denying our own natural ability. It's denying our divinity. When we're told that we can't even think about some things, or if we do, we can't communicate and share them with others. We can't share ideas. That's an expression of evil. Doesn't mean that everyone that does it is evil, because many people are not aware that what they're doing is supporting the denial of our divinity. Those individuals have a propensity for greed and power and control, easily fall in to the traps that create policies and technology and apply those things to deny people their divinity, because their propensity for greed or power and control is already there. So they're vulnerable, they're susceptible. But I think this is important because we're all going to be faced with decisions. How do we know what's right? Everybody you ask tells you a different story. If you Google it, you're going to get a skewed answer from some algorithm. How do you know what's really true? You go in your heart, and we haven't talked about that, and ask, does this deny or does it support my divinity, my humanness, my ability to love, heal, create, innovate, empathize with my brothers and sisters, forgive? These are important questions.
Yeah, discernment.
So I just said a whole lot.
It's a lot. It's beautiful. I'm with you. There's so many different facets to go on. And really, one of the things that, you keep talking about our divinity is it's encoded in us. And so what do you think is possible as we wake up to the truth of who and what we are, especially at a time you said that we're rapidly evolving? Things that used to take generations are take longer, everything is speeding up. And so what becomes possible when we really start to wake up? I think some of this can, and just like you're talking about, some of this can be from where are we coming from? Is this an againstness, or is this for love? Is this in support of our? What's not possible? Yeah. Because there's an emerging philosophy that everything that we build in the world around us is actually a mirror of something that we already do within us. And so let's just break this down. I love it.
Here's the philosophy. The philosophy is that consciousness informs itself through its creations, suggesting that the things we do in the world around us, we might call them entertainment, the music, books, movies, whatever. And they are. We're entertained. But ultimately, all those things are consciousness asking us to build something out here because we want to tell ourselves. We're asking ourselves to remember something about ourselves. So that's abstract. So let me give you concrete ideas here. Movies. One of the most surprising blockbusters of all time was The Matrix. Mm-hmm. It was relatively low budget, sci-fi. It was the highest grossing box office film until Avatar came along. All right. So The Matrix, what is it? Well, The Matrix, there's Hollywood shoot them up and all that, but ultimately the message, The Matrix said there's a world that we cannot see that influences the world that we can see, and we exist in both those worlds. That was the movie The Matrix. That touched people. It resonated because we know deep inside that that's very true. We exist in worlds that cannot be seen that are influencing our everyday lives.
The field, like you were talking about, the field.
Yeah. And then Avatar came along, reminding us of how important our relationship to the natural world really is. And young kids are drawn to all these superhero movies like the Avengers and Wonder Woman and Harry Potter, suggesting there's something dormant, asleep within them, that there is an ability that wants to wake up. And that's why young people are drawn to those. And so those are examples. Well, if it works in movies, it works in technology as well. So I worked in high tech all during the Cold War in the defense industry, not by choice. There's a whole story of how I ended up there as a senior computer systems designer in working for Air Force and DOD in the Cold War. The reason I say that is because I was exposed to some of the most advanced technology that this world has ever seen, including AI. We had AI back in the 80s, not like it is now, but we had AI. And what I'll say, Alyssa, is I have yet to see any technology built in the world around us that doesn't mirror what we already do in principle in our bodies, except we do it better. So where did the idea for the internet come from? The internet, we are the internet. We communicate with one another in the field telepathically. We communicate intuitively. I tell a story in the book. A mother in Sydney, Australia, wakes up at 3 a.m. and knows that her son in the battlefield of Afghanistan is in trouble. She calls his commanding officer. He says, hey, they're on patrol. Everything's fine. Not until he gets back that night and calls his mom and his wife and tells them that their convoy had been hit by a roadside bomb and he was okay. And he saved other people from burning vehicles. Not until he told them was that confirmed. How did she know before his commanding officer ever knew? And we hear this anecdotally. We all hear this. But that is a communication in a field. All right? So we are the internet. We are the blockchain. We've already talked about the blockchain. We are the vaccine. The vaccines built to inject into us mimic what our bodies already do, except we do it better. We do it across a broad spectrum in very precise sequences, whereas the chemicals don't have those sequences, and they force the body to target very specific contagions at the exclusion of others, which makes us vulnerable. It might be good for what we're vaccinated against, but what about everything else? We lose the ability for that, and we can go on and on with that. The point is that everything we're building around us mimics what we already are inside. So you asked the question, what would the world look like? It would look like the technology that we're building. We would have a simpler world, but we would be more complex. We would drop the clutter of much of the external technology because we are the technology. We're not primitive, hard computer chip technology. We're more than that. We're advanced. Neurons, cell membranes, soft technology, who have the ability to self-regulate at will, on demand, when we choose, through 7 primary epigenetic triggers: thought, feeling, emotion, belief, breath, focus, movement. I think that was 7.
Thought, feeling,
emotion, breath, focus, movement, nutrition.
What's the difference with feeling and emotion?
Emotions, 2 primary emotions are love and fear. Feelings are everything
Grief,
else.
sadness, anger.
And we have the feelings, and then we fuel our feelings through our love of what those feelings are or our fear of what those feelings are. That's a distinction made in ancient texts, ancient traditions. So the epigenetics, no other form of life can do what we can do. That makes us very, very powerful beings. That is the reason, I think, that there has been such a concerted effort for thousands of years to deny that power to the human species. And now that we're coming very close, this is a context. It's not happening in a vacuum. We're coming so close to the close of this cycle. We're so close to awakening that power. It takes more distractions in the world out there to keep us spun up in fear, to keep our attention occupied 24/7 with this crisis, because now we're not focusing in here. When you let those crises go, they're important, and we have to deal with what's happening in the world, not to the exclusion of awakening our potential. So the title of the book, ultimately, I think it is our destiny. It is our destiny to become fully human, to enable those extraordinary capacities that we think only special people have. Things like deep intuition, remote viewing, telepathy, but also rapid healing, longevity, super memory, super learning, super cognition, super longevity, all of those things. And the science is on our side. The science tells us it's all right there.
I love it. It's so exciting. And I'm wondering if there was a study done. You're talking about, I'm thinking of Edgar Cayce, and where, he could just sleep on a book and know the information from the book and tune into the field. Was there any research or studies that have been done that could give people hope and excitement about what is untapped within them?
Yeah, well, everything we're talking about.
Yeah,
everything we're talking about. There are many tools. I think one of the most multifunctional and one of the most potent tools we've shared through the Institute of Heart Math, Northern California. I'm going to look. May I look at our,
please, yes,
our community? If you're not familiar with Heart Math, it's capital HEART, capital MATH, but it's all one word. They're a pioneering research organization, Northern California, just outside of Santa Cruz, Boulder Creek, California, specializing in unconventional explorations of the human heart. We all know the heart is a pump, but it looks like it's probably the least of what it does. You can build a machine to pump the blood, but the heart does so much more. Now, in 1991, science discovered a neural network inside the human heart. This is brain-like cells, but they're not in the brain, they're in the heart. And it's this neural network that accesses the information in the field through what's called heart intelligence. So I didn't know we were going to do this. I'm going to do this from memory. In the journal, the scientifically peer-reviewed journal of the Journal of Complementary and Alternative Medicine, the quote says, "There is compelling evidence to suggest that the human heart is coupled to a field of information that is not bound by the laws of physics." Now think about what that means. There's a part of us, we have something inside of us that allows us to tap knowledge in a way that is not limited by time and space. And that is the intuition of the mother in Sydney, knowing that her son was in trouble. Can I just share a little bit more about?
I love that.
This is so interesting. So recently, scientists discovered there is a mechanism for the intuition and the way it works. So we know there's a field that connects all things. That's the medium. Information's moving through the medium. I just mentioned, see, I did this transparently so we could build on these, but you're not supposed to know that. I mentioned that DNA is an antenna, a 3D fractal antenna. All right. So now scientists have found that every time a woman conceives a life, even if that life doesn't come full term, in her body, that life is growing. And as the blood circulates, her DNA is lodged in the body of the child, typically in the liver. And the baby's DNA is lodged in the liver of the mother for every child. And the DNA is all tuned separately. And we know now that DNA is an antenna, and that antenna is broadcasting a signal in the field. This is how a mother knows when her child is in trouble. And this helps us to understand why when we lose our parent, or when a parent loses a child, it hurts like hell. And the reason it hurts is because there is a literal break in this chain of information. And we know that. We say it. We say it feels like a part of me is missing, or a part of me is broken, or I'm empty. We're expressing what it feels like to lose the energetic connection with another being, and that energetic connection is done through the DNA. So now the science is catching up. This is how the intuition between a mother and a child works. Well, now we know that our heart has a neural network that tunes to a field. What's in that field? Anything you would want to know about yourself. You can ask, is this choice a good choice for me? Is this a good partner for me? Not your mind. If you ask your mind, because the brain is a polarity organ, and in the brain you'll always have good, bad, right, wrong, success, failure, worthy, not worthy. That's a big one.
Binary. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But the heart is a non-polarity organ. And what's interesting, part of my heritage is Southeastern Cherokee on my father's side. And there's a word in Cherokee for what we're talking about. It's called Shante Ishta. It means single eye of the heart that sees what's true. Now, what's really, really interesting is in Lakota Sioux, completely different group of people, they have the same word and it means the same thing. Shanta Ishta, the single eye of the heart. So when there's no one to ask, we're never alone. Because when we learn to close our eyes and access our heart, we bypass the ego loops and the polarity of the mind. If we ask questions of the mind, we'll always get hung up in those ego loops, and that's what makes us crazy. Mom always used to tell me, if you're going to make a decision, take a piece of paper, make 2 columns, pros and the cons. It'll never work.
No.
Because you'll stack the deck, wherever you want it to stack. But heart intelligence, I think, is one of the most powerful tools that we have available to us as we move into these times of uncertainty. Because if you Google an answer, your answer is going to be stacked by the algorithm that feeds your feed. If you have a health condition, I have 2 friends doing this right now, have health conditions. They ask their immediate partners, spouses, what should I do? And they've got one answer because they're afraid they're going to lose their partner. Then they ask their friends, and their friends are all new thought people. And they say, well, drink this mushroom drink in your refrigerator and wear this crystal and say this chant, and then they Google, and Google says, do that. And then their doctor is telling, and they're like pulled in a million directions. And we've all had that before. If you go to your heart, and this is a really, really powerful tool, heart intelligence, and it's based on rock solid science. The key is learning to trust what it is, to learn the process as a go-to process. Yeah. And then it involves breathing. I've got all the instructions in the book, and we've talked about it in a lot of my videos, and a lot of people have been with me in programs. But it involves a shift in the focus to the heart, a slowing of the breathing, and a positive feeling of something like gratitude works pretty much for everyone, appreciation, care, something like that. And it is that combination that opens the heart into this field. And then you just ask the questions.
It's amazing. And the more you do it, the more that muscle memory comes in where you can access it.
It is like learning a muscle because you learn to trust. If you only do it when you're in trouble, then it's hard to trust because you say, okay, now I'm making this up And
the fear can really get the static on the line and lose clarity.
Absolutely.
Yeah. This is so beautiful and so helpful. And I also know heart-brain coherence is a big thing. For people that don't know what that is and how they can use it to tap in, what would you say?
We've skillfully and masterfully laid the foundation to answer this question.
Beautiful.
So now we know that we have a neural network in the heart. We all know we have a neural network in the brain. We're the only form of life, Alyssa, no other form of life can do what I'm going to describe, that can sit down in a chair at will, on demand, when we choose, and say, in this moment, I choose to create coherence between the neural network in my brain and the neural network in my heart. Now think about what this means. These are 2 separate organs that are now harmonized into a single potent system, a single potent neural network. And when we do that, we call that the optimal signal that creates that harmony is a coherent signal. Optimum coherence is a very low frequency, 0.1 hertz. Can't even hear that. 0.1 hertz. So there's 3 steps: shift the focus into the heart, slow the breathing, which triggers the parasympathetic nervous system and the relaxation response. That sets the table for the meal. Mm-hmm. And now the meal is when we can feel the positive emotion. And this is the key, because we choose to feel the positive emotion. So many people are waiting for the world to give them the reason to have the emotion. Say, well, what am I supposed to be grateful for? You get to choose. No other forms of life can create coherence by instinct, but they cannot consciously choose the time and the place and the duration and the quality of the coherence. So when we create that point, the 0.1 hertz, from the heart to the brain, that sets up the coherence between the heart and the brain. That coherence, just by virtue of doing that and nothing else, it has passive benefits. So what I mean by that is without doing anything else, It awakens longevity enzymes in the body. So you're younger after 3 minutes of doing your coherence. Creates greater resilience to change in life. I mean, who doesn't want that? The world's changing every day. It allows us to have an enhanced immune response. And who doesn't want that? Powerful immune response. I'm hesitating because there's so many stories. Let me just,
I want to hear a story.
Yeah,
tell me.
I'm also, I want to honor your time.
I love it. This is so fascinating.
Okay, so the scientists at the Institute of Heart Math, when they were testing the effects of the coherence, they would do blood work and saliva, IgA in the white blood cells, the first line of immune response in the human body. So they do blood and saliva samples, and they send them out to independent labs that didn't know what they were doing and say, what do these response, what does the immune response look like? And what is the red cell and the white cell count and things like that? So they had done this with the coherence, and one of the labs called back and said, my God, what is this antibiotic you're working with? Mm-hmm. And they said, well, what do you mean? They said, well, we've never seen a response like this. This is not a penicillin or a tetracycline. What kind of antibiotic is this? And a researcher at HeartMath said, there's no antibiotic. He said, this is a natural human ability. And the guy says, oh, come on. You can tell me, we're not going to tell anybody. He said, honest, this is a product of coherence. And the guy says, okay, your secret's safe with me. But the point was that we have the ability to elicit this extraordinary immune response. We're rarely told, about these kinds of things. So those are what we call passive benefits. Now, there are active benefits. And what I mean by that is once you create the coherence, you've got all these other things going on, but now you can also take that coherence and you can apply it to deep intuition. You can go into your heart, communicate with that field, and ask questions, heart intelligence. Affirmations. If you're going to use an affirmation effectively, you have to speak to your subconscious in a language that the subconscious recognizes, and it's not always verbal. Mm-hmm. When you create the coherence, that is a hotline to the subconscious without hypnosis. You don't have to use hypnotism. Then you drop in, once you create that coherence, you drop in your positive affirmations. And there's a skill to formulating the affirmations in a way that's effective. Can I share?
Please, yes.
So as a computer systems designer, what I learned in the industry was no matter how brief or how complex a piece of computer code is, you can have 3 million lines of computer code, or you can have 3 lines. They all have to have 3 principal parts to that program. The introduction or the declaration statements that say, this is what's about to happen. And then the work that says, this is what we're doing. And then the conclusion or the outro or the conclusion of that program, so the program knows when it's finished. Consciousness and biology are like a computer program. Remember, the things we build mimic what we already do. So we function the same way. An affirmation is a program in the operating system of consciousness. We're really good at saying the declaration or the opening. So if somebody says, I am, that's an opening. I am, and then you say, I'm ready to receive love and healing and abundance in my life. All right, the I am is the opening, the declaration. You've said to consciousness, something's about to happen. Receive abundance, love, healing in my life. Now you're giving it the work. Rarely in the affirmations do we have the closure that puts a timestamp on when we want this to happen. So they just let it flow. So how does the universe hear that? The universe hears, I am ready to receive healing and love and abundance and my perfect relationship. And the universe says, sweet. I'm really happy that you're ready to receive love and abundance and your perfect relationship. When you have a sense of when you might want that to happen, let me know. Mm-hmm. because we haven't given that sense. The key is we have to say some kind of closure, like right now. I'm ready to receive my healing right now.
I'm receiving my
healing. There's no ambiguity. And it's not a nit. This is literally the way code works. And this is a consciousness code that we're working with. So it's not about making anybody wrong. It's about incomplete statements. And if for some people, their affirmations seem maybe to not be as effective as they would like, they may want to consider, have you fulfilled these 3 requirements? Did you put a timestamp on when do you want the universe to bring this to you? And get ready for the big surprises, because when you say right now, man, it'll happen. It'll happen.
Yeah. And doing some of the healing work to get out of our own way, because sometimes we can have competing desires where we want it, but we're scared of it. And so accompanying it with doing some of the healing to remove the fears.
It's because we've been told we're not worthy.
That's right.
Because we are a flawed form of life and we need something outside of our body. So my goal in writing Pure Human, as I said, at the very least, is hopefully to evoke a sense of pride and appreciation in our humanness. And I think it invites the reader to ask a very simple question. And the question is this: do I love myself enough to accept the deep truth of my own divinity, of my own humanness, or what it means for me to be human? And to answer that question, you've got to determine whether or not you can accept the power of your own imagination, your own creativity, how deeply are you willing to love? Are you willing to surrender the love that you have in your life in exchange for something even deeper? Or do you love just a little bit, but you always hold something back because you've been hurt in the past and you don't want that to happen again? And there's no right or wrong answer. These are very deeply personal questions. The better we know ourselves, the less we fear our own power. The better we know ourselves, the less we fear our own power. And that's what Pure Human is really all about. And we are all going to be challenged to give elements of our humanness away, sometimes deceptively. And so we come back and ask the question, does what I'm being asked to do, does it affirm or deny my divinity? And then you've got the answer. Then you can act consciously. Doesn't mean you don't do what you're doing, but you know consciously you're giving some of your humanness away to do it.
I really hear you empowering people to find their own truth, and out of the love for being human and waking up to our divinity, sharing what else is possible in our human potential, and so that people can make a conscious choice rather than it be flippant.
They're going to be told by experts. And we see these in Silicon Valley, we see AI experts. This is the next step in human evolution that we will, Ray Kurzweil, who I love Ray Kurzweil. He's an author, science fiction author. I used to be director of AI at Google. I don't know what his role is right now. He says...
For those that don't know, he's a futurist.
He is a futurist. And he says we are very close within just the next 2030, 2031, to reaching what he calls the singularity, where our consciousness is merged with the digital world that the WEF is talking about. The singularity where we essentially, the idea of holding technology in our hands is becoming obsolete. We've been told recently that mobile phones within 5 years, we won't hold them in our hands, they'll be in our bodies, and we will be dialing information and communicating with our friends through the way that we think through this technology, because we will all be part of the cloud. I don't know about you. I don't like the idea of everyone. That's the Borg mentality. That's exactly what that is. That's a Star Trek reference. I think technology outside of our bodies can serve us. Inside our bodies, it can enslave us. And once it happens, we'll never go back. Once it happens, once we lose our humanness, we'll never get that back again. And I think we need to be aware of that, at least to know what it is we're giving away before we choose to give it away. Then if we choose to, at least it's a conscious choice. You know what you're giving away. You're not being deceived. We owe that to ourselves, I believe.
And thank you for leading the way and making sure that we're informed, and just the love that you have for our humanity and what's possible is so beautiful.
I'm in good company. There's a lot of people out there talking about this in different ways. Hopefully this brings it together in a way that that helps us to make sense of it and apply it in our lives.
Anything that you want to leave people with around Pure Human, this book that's out, that just anything that you want to leave people with?
You know, I'm just going to acknowledge once again, it's a very different way of thinking. It's not always comfortable. We, in some respects, I think the New Thought community have deceived ourselves into this comfort zone where it's only about our little bubble, and somehow that's separate from the rest of the world. And now the rest of the world is changing so quickly. Many people are not prepared. They're not prepared emotionally and psychologically to embrace the change because they've been in the bubble. So I think it's important to acknowledge that that bubble is part of our world, and that we have everything we need. We're wired to thrive in this kind of change. And the world is asking us the simple question, do we love ourselves enough to accept the truth of our divinity, our divine destiny, to awaken these potentials in our lives? And when we say yes, man, nothing can stop us. Nothing can stop us. That's what's exciting.
Yeah. And I love that there's practical, grounded tools in the book, as well as stories and science and research. Where do people stay connected to you, and talk to us about where they can get the book as well?
Well, the book, wherever books are sold. Amazon, I think, is probably the best way. Barnes and Noble. How you stay connected to me? You can't. I live in the middle of nowhere in a high desert of New Mexico. Nobody can find me. No. You just go to our website, Gregg Braden, Gregg with two G's, GreggBraden.com. And everything you need to know is right there.
What a gift you are. Thank you for who you are and how you move through the world.
Alyssa, this time went by really quickly.
Yeah.
It seemed like. I want to thank you for your trust in me, because the truth is you didn't know what I would say or what we were going to do.
Yeah.
I have thoroughly enjoyed our time together. I'm not sure why we never worked together before.
Yeah.
But maybe we'll call this Alyssa and Gregg's Big Fun Podcast number 1.
That's right.
And I'll look forward to our next.
Same. Me as well. Thank you, Gregg. Thank you so much for doing this work that changes the world, starting with yourself. It truly does make a difference. And if you're finding value in this podcast, a cost-free way to support us is by following us. It does help us grow, and we are so grateful. Leave a review on Apple or Spotify, submit a screenshot of that, and upload it to alyssanobriga.com/podcast. As a thank you gift, we will be sending you one of the most powerful tools that you can use on any area of your life to help you tap into your full potential, so that you don't let fear hold you back from really stepping into your dreams. I have so much more magic I want to share with you, and I cannot wait to do that soon. But for now, I just want to say thank you so much for being an example of what it's like to live with an open heart and mind in the world.